Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to work through chapter 1. There are only 6 or 7 slides in chapter 1, but some major, broad developmental issues that I want to make sure that we cover, that you guys have a basic understanding for. Also, keep in mind that chapter 1 will be on the video today, and I will post these slides to Canvas. But also, you'll be responsible for the notes that we'll take on Wednesday in chapter 2, and you'll be responsible for the reading in chapter 2. And those 2 chapters will make up our first Q&A day on Friday. So before Thursday night at midnight, you need to post your 3 questions that you have about the first 2 chapters. It can come from the notes or from what you've read, but you'll need to have that posted by Thursday night at midnight. So I want to take you through a couple of slides that are very broad, but again, will lay a foundation for us of how we go about interacting with the science of human development. So we're going to go through those slides now. The first slide that we want to show you is really the scientific method. Many of you have probably seen this before or have heard of the scientific method, but it's really how we ask or answer the questions in science. How do we create and form a question, and then how do we give a scientific answer to that question? So the first step in the process is always curiosity or forming a question. We just wanted to develop a question based on an intrigue that we have in the world of science, and we form a question out of that. The second step is the hypothesis. We want to take the question that we've created and we want to build out of that a hypothesis, or basically what we believe to be the appropriate answer to the question that we've created. Once we have the hypothesis and the question in place, then we want to test our hypothesis. We want to run research to indicate and help us determine if, in fact, what we have chosen as the correct answer is valid for this. And so we'll test our hypothesis to see if it answers the question. The fourth step in the process is to analyze our data and to draw conclusions. So we'll analyze the data and we'll determine if our hypothesis was accurate or if it was inaccurate, if our hypothesis was right or wrong. Perhaps we come to a situation where our hypothesis is partly correct and partly incorrect. All that will be determined based on how we analyze our data and the conclusions that we draw from that. And finally, in the scientific community, we want to report the results of our testing, and because we want other people who are out there in the world of science to see what we've done, we want them to be able to answer the same questions that we're answering, and we want to be able to have them to see the results so that the same question may not have to be asked again in the scientific community. So we report the results. Also, we report results of scientific findings, whether or not they prove our hypothesis or disprove our hypothesis. So just because a test result doesn't turn out the way we want it to, it doesn't mean we don't report those results. We always want the community of science to know what we're studying. So that is, in fact, the 5 steps of the scientific method. Many of you, again, have probably seen that, but for those of you who have not, it's a 5-step process that teaches us how to answer the questions that science poses. In terms specifically of human growth and development, there are 7 broad developmental categories that we want to make sure you're aware of. The first category is infancy, and it goes from 0 to 2 years of age. The second category, early childhood, from 2 to 6. Middle childhood, 6 to 11. Adolescence, 11 to 18. The emerging adult, from 18 to 25. Adulthood, from 25 to 65. And then finally, late adulthood, from 65 and forward. These are the 7 categories of human growth and development that we will study in depth this semester. My challenge to you, my suggestion to you, is to make sure that you commit these 7 developmental stages to memory, both the stages and the ages that correspond with those stages. You will need to know this information throughout the course of the semester, so go ahead and commit it to your memory now, the 7 stages of development. Now, when we talk about human growth and development, we talk about growth in particular, and growth happening over time. So on the left, you can see our growth module, and on the bottom, you can see our time module. As we look at growth, we recognize that it happens in 4 different fashions. The orange line represents a growth and decline. The blue line represents linear growth. The green line represents a growth in stages. And then the orange line represents unpredictable growth. Those are the four basic styles of change and growth that we see in each of these 7 developmental stages. Now, as we talk about each of those stages individually, you will see areas of both growth and decline, linear growth, stage growth, and unpredictable growth. We just want you to be aware early on of the fact that all growth is not linear, but all growth happens in one of these 4 major patterns. The other option that you have is the purple line, which is really no growth at all. So over the course of time, there is no specific growth. And we hope for all of you that's not the case. So those are the 4 styles of growth that are happening in these 7 developmental periods. Again, I hope the questions are beginning to form. I hope that you're beginning to write those down, to jot those down, because you can submit those by Thursday night for your Q&A on Friday. You'll need 3 questions from all of the information that I present this afternoon and from what's being presented on Wednesday in class. So 3 total questions from chapters 1 and 2. Now, the next thing that we want to look at is the systems approach, or the ecological approach to human growth and development. The ecological approach, or the systems approach to human growth and development. What we want to look at first is the outermost system, which is the Chronos system. And that is really a simply put dimension of time. We have to understand that our life is happening in chronology. It's happening from day to day. It's happening over a period of set time. And so that is our Chronos system. That is the largest and most outer ring of our development. Now we'll move interior as we go down. The next system is the macro system. The macro system are those broadest of issues that impact your development. For instance, cultural issues of the day and social concerns of the day are the broadest issues that impact you and your development as an individual. Where you are from in terms of your culture and the social and socioeconomic patterns that you come from are some of the largest influencers on your development. Inside of the macro system is the ecosystem. 2 of the primary systems there are political philosophies and economic policies. Now, that doesn't mean a lot to most of us, but in the world, we engage politics at every level of our lives, and we engage the economy really at every level of our lives. And so those systems impact us at the ecosystem level. Political philosophies and economic policies. Now, here's where things maybe start to make a little bit more sense to you as you understand how you have become the person that you are. Inside the mesosystem, there are a number of different influencers. We have the educational system that you are a part of, community structures, medical institutions, transportation systems, shopping areas, the media, and religion are all a part of what makes up the mesosystem of your development. These are systems that often interact with one another, so you can't avoid one without the other. We understand that your community that you grew up in played a part in your educational system. The transportation systems that you were a part of were a result of the community that you lived in. For instance, perhaps your religious values played a role on how you view mass media, or your religious values play a role on how you view medical institutions. All of these mesosystems interact together to form who you are. The next stage or system inside of that is the microsystem. Now, this is where things really get particular to who you are. Inside the microsystem, we have your family. We have your school that you attended, the neighborhood that you were a part of, your peer group, your set of friends that you grew up with, and really your places of worship. As you can see, these are immediate and direct influences on who you are as an individual. The final and most interior area or system that we look at as a development is who you are as an individual. Your age, your sex, your gender, your race, your gifts, your abilities, your talents, your temperament, all of those things who make up exactly who you are as an individual are on the most interior level of this ecological model. So again, this is a systems model and an ecological model. There's a ton of information in this graph. I understand that, but I want you to see broadly that there is a systems model for development, and you can begin to see hopefully how all of these things in this ring really work together to form exactly who you are becoming as an individual. All of these systems play some sort of role in your life to begin to develop you into the person that you are today and into the person that you're ultimately going to become. So there are three major issues that really overlap in our life and in terms of development. Our ethnicity, our race, and our culture are the three primary issues in our life that overlap, that ultimately determine who we are going to be. So I want you to get a real broad picture of the culture that you came from. I want you to get a real broad understanding of your race. And then I want you to get a real broad understanding of your ethnicity. And understand that when you put those three on top of one another, you get this innermost area, which is really the individual that you are becoming. Now, there are 5 primary characteristics of human development. You will need to know these. Again, this might be a great place to ask some questions, but I'm going to give them to you very quickly. The first one is multidirectional, and this, again, is in your text. Chapter 1, table 1.3, so you have access to this. But the first characteristic of development is multidirectional, where change occurs in every direction, not always in a straight line. The second area or characteristic of development is multidisciplinary, where we develop across a number of different fields during our developmental period. For instance, in academics, sometimes we develop in biology and mathematics at the same time, or religion and English at the same time. So it's multidisciplinary. The third characteristic of development is multi-contextual. We live again in a multi-contextual society, much like the systems approach to development. We live in a multi-contextual society. Our history, our economics, our family, all make up part of that unique system of multi-contextual issues. The fourth characteristic of development is that we are multicultural. We do not live in an isolated world any longer. We live in a multicultural world, and that has a direct impact on our development. And the fifth and final characteristic is plasticity. It means that every individual and every trait that you have as an individual can be changed at any point in life. Change is ongoing, but it's not always random, and it's never easy. But we are, as individuals and as human beings, made to be plastic. And again, by that I mean we can change and alter throughout the course of our life. So those are the 5 characteristics of human development. And that's really the end of the slideshow. Again, I know it was going to be short today, but I wanted you to get a grasp of these major categories of chapter 1. Just a few broad sweeping issues from chapter 1 that I want you to grab today and tomorrow. And then Wednesday we're going to cover chapter 2. And then on Friday we will have our Q&A from chapters 1 and chapters 2. So if you need me, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on Wednesday morning.